my god, he's going to go around the inside. He's going to send it. He's taking the lead of the Canadian Grand Prix on the last lap. Matt Turner takes the win in a remarkable race. We have teammates coming together. How devastating!
Good afternoon, evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the iFormula League here, round number 7 from the Formula 2 category. And we are at the Autodromo Nazionale Monza, or more lovingly known to everyone else as just Monza. Beautiful circuit this, 3.57 miles, and arguably one of the fastest tracks that we will have on this calendar. Not very many high downforce corners aside from the 2 Lesmos, 1 and 2, and then the Parabolica as well. Obviously very tight on that entry to the corner, and then also on exit opening up. Really nice for you to be able to get a really long run down that start-finish straight before you go into the first chicane, and it's always one that our sim racers look forward to with bated breath normally. Yeah, normally we typically have a survive lap 1 challenge, and I think it's the same in any sort of form of motorsport, any form of sim racing. When you come to Monza, it's all about trying to get through lap number 1 absolutely fine. But that's not what we're here for. We're not here to talk about that per se. What we are here to talk about is the Formula 2 season. How is it shaping up? How's it going? Well, currently, Cesar Cabral is the man on top so far with 106 points. Chris Byron behind in second place with 104 points. So look for those two to be trying to battle to make any sort of positions that they can. Lewis Archer in third place with 95 points. Obviously did have that drop week in week 1, wasn't here. So very good job from him to manage to get within 10 points of Cesar Cabral. Sorry, 11 points within Cesar Cabral. And then Carlos Catal in 4th with 78. Dropped back a bit in the past couple of races. Good results from Lewis Archer, Chris Byram and Cesar Cabral have seen Carlos drop back a little bit further than he probably would have liked to. Ivan Bovekamp in 5th position with 62 points, and Lewis Colon in 6th with 36 points. Frederick Larson, the F3 driver, in 7th with 31 points. Alex Gutnecht in 8th with 25, and Ronald Mathot in 9th with 15 points. Daniel Thomas rounding out the top 10 of the championship with 13 points. And what a championship is it shaping up to be. I mean, we've got teams battling for every position that they can get on track now, and it's starting to get near the late part of the season now, where everyone is really trying to get as many points as they can. Obviously the bonus point for safest driver, bonus point for the fastest lap in the race as well, all things that we're all very much wanting to keep an eye on throughout the course of these last few races here. But let's stop talking about that for a second and jump on board with qualifying. A couple laps already being set here now, as we will take a look at Chris Byram currently, who is our fastest man so far with a 136.75. Jake Potts behind him with a 137.0. Alexander Carver-Robbins with a 137.6, and then Curtis Martin with a 138.0. So quite a bit of a spread so far, probably more than you would have liked to see, but there are a couple of people yet to set representative lap times, people like Carlos Catal, Alex Gutnecht as well, Lewis Archer, and then also Cesar Cabral actually isn't out on track yet, hasn't left the pit lane at all, as there seems to be a huge crash there in the background. But yeah, it's one of those circuits that we can see just from the level of the rear wing how low these guys are going on their downforce. It seems like this circuit is just going to be one of those ones where you're going to have to watch out for any driver here to maybe try something different with the setup, try something that's a little bit just interesting and different, to see if they can find any sort of an edge. Obviously the tried and true combo here around Monza is low downforce and a very sort of agile car into the chicanes, but then you suffer a little bit through corners like the Lesmos and the Parabolica. But so far it looks as though Chris Byram has managed to figure something out, but a couple of other drivers struggling a bit to set representative lap times. We'll have to wait and see a bit further on into the session how things go on there. And I think the way that it's shaping up currently, if Chris Byram can get a good start here, I was speaking to him a little bit earlier before the race started, and if Chris Byram can get a good start here, he's looking to do what he did last time out around, I think it was the Circuit of the Americas, to where he just wants to get out in front, let people like Lewis Archer, Carlos Catal, Cesar Cabral all start battling behind him, so he can get a really nice good run and really finish high up in the points. Obviously needs to finish ahead of Cesar Cabral for the championship standings, but we'll wait and see what he does. Obviously there will be a lot of slipstream battles here this race, so it wouldn't surprise me to see people maybe taking it a bit easy in qualifying, trying to line themselves up behind someone so that they can get a really nice slipstream there into turn number 1, as well as it seems like Chris Byram is just doing a bit of weaving there at the end of his lap and going to pull off to the side of the circuit. Let's go on board with Jake Potts at the moment, as it looks like he is not improving. I think he is on an out lap for now, so we'll see what his sort of lap times can be and see if he can improve on that 137, as Lewis Archer should come through to finish one of his first valid flying laps. And we'll see where that puts him. It's looking like it's a good lap so far. Obviously, the greens in every sector not representative necessarily of what an overall lap time is, and it is very good from Lewis Archer, a 136.144. That is 0.3 quicker than Chris Byram, so absolutely amazing job from him to find that 0.3. On a circuit like this, 0.3 is absolutely massive. You know, 0.3 can be, yes, it can be as simple as a draft, but maybe there was also something else to it, you know, getting a good run out of the chicanes or getting a good run through the Lesmos as well. Very important corners, as we will stay on board with Jake Potts and see if he can improve through Sector 1. We'll wait and see what that looks like. It doesn't look like he's improving in Sector 1 yet, but going through the second chicane here before the Lesmos, let's see what he can do, see if there's any sort of time to be found and jumping through the Lesmos. Very, very fast corners and very deceptive corners as well, as Carlos Catal is also going to finally set his first representative time, hopefully, with no off-tracks. He should get there up on the leaderboards as well. Louis Colon coming through almost to finish his first time. Alex Gutneck there in 5th position, and Carlos Catal does knock him back down to 6th by going 3rd there with a 136.874. So again, 0.7 off that lap time from Lewis Archer, so I'm wondering whether or not Lewis actually found some time with maybe a bit of slipstream, and just as I say that, he is still improving. Going through the final corner here, the Parabolica, there looks to be a car in front of him. I'm not sure which turning point car that is, but that's going to give him a massive advantage with the slipstream going down the start-finish straight. Let's see if he can improve at all, and it doesn't look like he did. It looked like he actually lost time there through the final couple of sectors, so improving through the 2nd, 3rd and 4th and 5th sectors, but unfortunately not quite finding the pace through the 1st sector. So Lewis Archer there missing his braking zone and having to just take the escape road and continue on, but I believe he is just going to let some people through. And yeah, the man that I was curious about, Cesar Cabral, is just on his first out lap now, so we'll wait and see what Caesar's first lap time can be like, and I actually kind of want to jump on board with him and see what it will look like from the not the gyro cam but the roll bar. and seeing what it looks like sort of from this driver's, or as close as we can get to a driver's eye anyway, and take a look and just see how difficult it is to control the car through a couple of these corners. Obviously, first chicane is pretty difficult by itself, a little bit deceptive maybe. You're braking so late as well that it can really just throw you off sometimes. So let's see what he does into the first chicane here, the Retafilio chicane. Braking at the 100-meter board, downshifting into first gear nicely over the first apex, and almost steps it out a bit there on exit. Gets on the power a little bit too eager. Now flat out through the Curva Grande. Not many opportunities really to bin it here, but going side by side and setting yourself up here for the Roggio chicane, and making sure that if anyone goes for a move there, you've got to avoid the sand on exit as well, because that will really slow your lap time. Now into the first Lesmo, turn number 4 here with Cesar Cabral, keeping it nice and tidy so far, braking at the 50 for the second Lesmo. Surprised he didn't take too much curb there, but I imagine it would unsettle the car and cause maybe a bit of issues getting on power later on as well. And it looks as though currently he is down on a couple of his lap times. Obviously none of them have really been valid yet, but here we go into Ascari, probably one of the most famous corners in motorsport, I would have to say. It is such a lovely corner when you nail it, but when you don't, it's so... It feels like the car is just not gripping at all through there. But at the moment, doesn't look like anyone else is improving massively. Carlos Catal, though, does set purple in the first sector and then green, so personal best in the fourth as well. Cesar Cabral setting 2 greens and then another one to put himself now in third place, and I believe Alex Gutnecht also improved there with a 137.1. So let's see whether or not Carlos Catal can answer back, because Carlos Catal, we saw, did set a couple of good sector times, but so far not seeing that resulting in a improved lap time. He wants to get within that sort of 3/10 window to really start battling with Cesar Cabral and Chris Byram, and then if he can find the time and start battling with Lewis Archer as well, who knows? Maybe we can get a fight on for pole position here in qualifying. 12 minutes of this session gone, 25-minute session, and it looks like Lewis Colon is also improving on his lap time, so hopefully it's valid and we can see maybe Lewis jump from 9th to maybe even 6th or 7th potentially, and get within sort of that 1 second range of Lewis Archer. Is always nice to see. So let's see what he can do, if he improves at all. And it doesn't look like he did, or possibly it was an invalid lap, so unfortunately not an improvement from himself. But Lewis Archer, I think, has just done a new personal best, and indeed he has, with a 135.629. That lap is absolutely ridiculous from Lewis Archer. How he's just found that much time and gapped the entire field by 0.8 is beyond me. Cesar Cabral is on for a good lap time, but I don't think it's going to be quick enough. I think Cesar Cabral needs to absolutely put in a miracle final sector here, and it doesn't look like he improves enough. He did improve, but so did Carlos Catal. So both of them now into the 136.3s, and very, very close lap times between the two, but absolutely nothing on Lewis Archer this time round. And this is one of the things that I think when you're looking at qualifying sessions, you're looking at just sort of that pace and wondering whether or not that is just qualifying pace from Lewis Archer, as Chris Byram now jumps himself back up into that second position, 136.2. But again, still 0.6 off of what Lewis has managed to achieve. So I don't know whether or not Lewis has found some sort of setup tweak that's enabled him to find that much time, but it's looking a little bit ludicrous on just how he's able to just find so much time without really seeming to put in too much effort. Obviously in qualifying you want to go for a 100% effort lap, but I think it would be almost silly to say sometimes that some drivers aren't really doing that. You know, some drivers are putting in maybe 99%, but just trying to get some bankers in there, and once they get a banker that they're happy with, then they can go gung-ho. And I think that's what we're finding from Lewis Archer, is he's put in that one lap time of that 36, and he went, okay, now I can just absolutely send it, and send it he did. 135.6. Now I'm wondering whether or not that's going to be a new qualifying record, because that lap seems like it is untouchable at the moment, and if that's the case, then I mean, I think it's just going to show us how the race is going to go from here on out. But Alexander Carver-Robbins is currently up on his sector times, I believe not by too much, but it will be hopefully enough to see himself jump up from 9th, maybe overtake Alex Gutnet there in 8th, possibly jump through maybe into 7th as well. And speaking of some new faces to the championship this weekend, we have Rob, I believe how you pronounce that is Sluter, I think. I'm sure he'll correct me. I'm sure I butchered it, but we'll call him Rob for now, in the number 52. Currently in 7th place. I believe he raced last season, and he was racing with, I believe, Ivan Bothkamp last season, from what I heard from Chris Byram. So nice little bit of background knowledge there that I didn't know. Obviously, I only started following the championship this season, so trying to keep track of who's new and who's not, and seeing where the championship goes from here. But yeah, it's looking as though he's coming back and doing pretty well for himself. You know, currently in 8th, 1/10 off of Alexander Carver-Robbins, who did improve in the end, moved himself up from 9th to 7th, which is nice to see. I'm sure we will see maybe Daniel Thomas also look to improve his lap time, and just as I say that, he does, and now jumps down into sort of the mid 36s there, the 136.611. So that's 1 second off of what Lewis Archer, his teammate, managed to do. So setup wise, it seems like it's going well for the two GTR Evolution boys, but Archer just managing to find something else that no one else really seems to be able to find. I mean, Cesar Cabral just improved again, but still not even 5/10 off yet. You know, he's managing to find some sort of pace to get into the low 136s now, the 136.21, but still a 135.63. I don't think I can say it enough just how good that lap is, and I want to watch that lap back at some point. I really do, because that lap is absolutely insane as Lewis Colon jumps up there as well. Breaks the 136 barrier for himself, so good to see some improvement there from him. Now pushing himself up into 8th place as well, so as we see Cesar Cabral go a little bit too wide there just on the exit of that corner, so I imagine he won't be improving on this lap. But one man who looks like he is improving so far is Daniel Thomas. We'll wait to see, maybe he's backing off, just setting himself up for a good run through the Parabolica before starting yet another flying lap, as Lewis Colon just goes green in Sector 1. So Lewis Colon looking to try and improve his lap time just a little bit more, still finding a bit more pace. And if he can find more pace, obviously he can push himself up maybe into 7th, 6th position. I think potentially overtaking Daniel Thomas now would be a tall ask to find those 3 more tenths, because I think now is when you're starting to look at sort of the representative times and where people are at near the end of the session. Obviously, we still have another 7 minutes left, so yeah, we may see some more people improve, as Lewis Archer is going on a pit exit to see if he can improve his lap time, which interesting decision, considering he is currently well out in front, and I think now it's just a let's see how far I can push it and see if I can really set a statement here, as well as we'll jump on board with the speed cameras as well and get a true sense of speed and how quick these cars go through into the second Lesmo. I absolutely love that camera, and yeah, the boys over at Track Cams Gourmet, absolutely amazing job on all of the cameras that we use here in the IFL. And yeah, it just provides that next level immersion for you guys watching at home as well. But yeah, Daniel Thomas improving through sector 2, but not in sector 1 and sector 3, so, and also not in sector 4, so I imagine we're not going to see any sort of improvements from him yet. And Alex Gutnecht, I think, will be the next one to maybe try and see if he can improve on that 137.1 that he has so far. Would need to break into the 136s, I think, to start to really sort of push the boys to maybe get a little bit quicker. But it's looking like there's going to be a nice spread here for the sort of mid-pack battle, sort of between 5th down to about 10th, I imagine. And then once again, it's looking like we've got Cabral, Byram and Kitao battling it out for the for the rest of the podium spots. I mean, with Lewis Archer doing a 135.6, if he has that pace during the race, as long as he gets through turn 1 cleanly and he can get away from the DRS train that will be forming behind him. Obviously, DRS works a little bit differently, so you don't necessarily have to be within 1 second of the car in front, but you do have to make sure that you're using them wisely, as you only have 8 of them throughout the race. And there are quite a few laps here this go around here through Monza, and a circuit that I think requires quite a few laps. Obviously, it's quite a quick circuit. The distance of the circuit itself is also not that long, so yeah, it's looking as though it's just going to be a nice and easy time, I think, of just you just got to keep the car on the grey stuff, and hopefully the race goes well. As I said before, make sure you get through turn 1, lap 1, make sure you get out the other side of that, and yeah, as we see Alex Gutnecht, unfortunately, getting it all sorts of wrong there through Ascari up on the exit curbs. And unfortunately, that's what it'll do to you. Ascari is quite brutal on the curbs, so I think he's just going to reset and maybe try again and see if he can improve at all. And we will jump on board with Lewis Archer as he is finishing up his warm-up lap here for his next run, and we'll see if he can improve at all. A couple of other drivers currently improving is Cesar Cabral. It doesn't look like Carlos Kitao is improving at all yet. I believe he did just finish a warm-up lap, or is about to, so he's just starting a flying lap now. So we'll see a representative time coming from him shortly. Chris Byram also, I believe, doing an outlap, who I believe is currently behind Lewis Archer. So Chris Byram looking for a tow there from the guy in front of him, and maybe seeing if that's how he can find the time. And Carlos Kitao not up through the first sector time, but Cesar Cabral purple through the 4th sector. If he can get Parabolica right, maybe he can actually start pushing Lewis Archer, and really starting to say, hey mate, you may have gone back out, but you've got to get a lap together, because he's just gone purple through that final sector and unfortunately doesn't improve enough. 136.21 again, but he's showing that he has the pace now. So Cesar Cabral maybe looking to get it all sorts of right, and hopefully manages to maybe take the pole position from Lewis Archer here near the end of the race. Obviously, we've got 2 minutes left of this session, and we are on board with Lewis Archer, who isn't improving yet at all, but one man behind him who is improving, Chris Byram, improving through the first sector, a little bit down in the second. So we'll see whether or not he's down enough as we go through the Ascari chicane here, trying to use as much curb as you can, but you've got to avoid that inside curb on the second part of the corner, because otherwise you can find yourself in the wall very easily. Chris Byram now not improving through the 3rd and 4th sector either, so it's looking as though Chris Byram unfortunately will not be able to take pole position, but he's going to have one more go at it, one more run, and I believe so will Lewis Archer, coming across the pit lane line there as well. A little bit aggressive there, but you know, this is how you do it. You got to go for the shortest run you possibly can, and Byram does improve, but not by much. So we'll see whether or not either of these drivers can improve their lap times, and if they can, then I mean, I'm pretty sure if any of them improve now, it will be them who takes pole position. I mean, Byram is going to have a massive ask here to improve by 0.6, but he does have the slipstream from Lewis Archer, who currently still cannot find that time he found in the first sector, and using all of the curb and a little bit more as well through that chicane, and trying to use as much of the curbs as he can as Lewis Colon does improve himself near the end of this session. We'll have one more lap if he wants it to try and improve one more time, but we'll wait and see, as there seems to be a big slide there from Lewis Archer. Almost lost it into the wall, and gotta try and avoid not going that wide out of the second Lesmo, as Lewis Archer's trying to almost not give Chris Byram any sort of slipstream here into Ascari. Chris is going to try and follow as close as he can, try and get as much slipstream as he can, and is this what we're going to see through the race potentially, with Lewis Archer and Chris Byram battling out for first place? I mean, if this is how this is going to be in the race, I'm excited for it. Lewis Archer did find time there through the Ascari chicane, but is it too little too late as he goes extremely wide through the Parabolica, trying to push it absolutely to the limits, taking the shortest run to the line? And does he improve on his time? I don't think he does, but does Chris Byram improve on his time? And he does. He does end up getting second place from Cesar Cabral right at the death there with a 1:36.103. It's not enough to challenge that 1:35.629 from Lewis Archer, but it does mean that Byram will start on the front row of the grid here for the F2 at Monza. And if that qualifying session is anything to go by, this is going to be one mental race. I think this race is going to be absolutely crazy. We've got Lewis Archer setting an absolutely blistering time, and I'm going to go out on a limb and say he broke the qualifying record here. I could be wrong on that one, but that seems like an otherworldly time in comparison to what everyone else has managed to do. So, as far as I'm aware, I'm pretty sure he has just gone and smashed it. Chris Byram then in second place. I mean, 0.4 off, you know, it's not too shabby, but yeah, you're just wondering, where was that time? Where was that 0.4? Because, you know, it's difficult to find, you know. A circuit like Monza, you've got the chicanes, the Lesmos, and the Parabolica, really, as sort of your only key corners to try and find any sort of time. So if you're down 0.4, you're thinking, what, is that a 10th per corner, or is that one chicane? Did I do really badly in comparison, or is that the two Lesmos? Did I just not carry enough speed through there? I don't know where I'm finding this time. And yeah, I mean, Lewis Archer absolutely dominating qualifying, and wasn't able to get anywhere close after that. So that's one of those laps that I'm pretty sure we'll look back on, or at least he'll look back on, as an absolutely insane start to this round 7, and setting himself up quite nicely for the rest of the season as well. Like, if he can continue this pace, then who knows? We might see Lewis Archer actually battling it out for the top places, and once again battling it out for the top positions here later on. And, you know, it's one of those things that I think, as a driver, you're now obviously 7 rounds in, and in those 7 rounds, you sort of know who you're battling with. You know where you're at now. And I think, yes, we're getting some new faces and new names every session, but even still, you know, we may end up finding some sort of equilibrium, as it were, and some sort of session where everyone is sort of now working everyone else out and can really deliver when it comes to the actual racing aspect of it. Because it's all well and good doing what Lewis has done, but if your race pace doesn't translate to what you've done in qualifying, then you may find yourself dropping back off the start, and you've got to be very careful here through Monza turn 1. It's almost like you kind of want to, you just want to keep like eyes in the back of your head, to the side of you, both sides and ahead of you, because you don't know where cars are going to come from. You don't know how aggressive people are going to be down the start, and it is quite a long way off the grid to the start line. Sorry, to turn number 1, as we see Lewis just completely cut the chicane there, and maybe that's where he found his 4th attempt. But yeah, it's one of those things that Monza is a track where we all know there's going to be a bit of chaos. Regardless on how good your league is or how good the drivers are, turn 1 at Monza is always a bit of a nightmare. And that's probably why we love this circuit, because we can always see some sort of action happening early on. But yeah, I just absolutely love this circuit. It really is absolutely incredible. But let's see if we can bring up the results here from qualifying, just while we're waiting for the warm-up to be finished. And yeah, it does look as though Lewis Archer, as I mentioned, did set the pole position with a 1:35.629. Chris Byron there 4/10 off of him, with I believe that was a 1:36.1 at the end of the session there to improve on his time. Cesar Cabral 5/10 off of Lewis Archer's time, but again only a 10th off Chris Byron, so essentially we'll see a really close battle between those between Chris Byron, Cesar Cabral and Carlos Gattal again. Obviously Carlos needs to bounce back after a couple of probably not optimal results from him, and we see Daniel Thomas there in 5th position. Jake Potts takes 6th, Lewis Colon in 7th, Alexander Carver-Robbins in 8th, and then Rob as well taking 9th, one of the newer faces here in the F2, at least for myself. As far as I'm aware, he did race last season, but new face to me, and I'm sure a new face to some of our viewers as well. Alex Gutnecht in 10th, and then Don Satterfield in 11th, and Curtis Martin there in 12th position to round out the grid here for the iFormula League Round 7 from Monza. And yeah, I mean, I'm just excited to get going, to be honest. I just want to see an absolutely amazing race. I think it is arguably one of the best tracks to watch a race at. You know, you can see so much action from seemingly not a lot of track, you know. There's not very many corners, but the action that it seems to provide every race is absolutely insane, and there's always drama when you talk about Monza. So yeah, it's going to be a good one, and I'm sure these guys are eagerly waiting as well, and just as nervous, I'm imagining. Some of these guys want to really start to try and push for everything they possibly can, and yeah, I mean, Monza's changed its layout a couple times over the years, and that banking still looming there in the background, very, very cool to see. And it's one of those things that I do hope at one point maybe we see the return of that banking come back in the real world, but I think it's just a little bit too dangerous. Would need to be completely repaved, and just a probably too much effort than is needed to return some of the glory. But hey, I mean, regardless, we can still race around the what we now know as the more traditional GP circuit, and enjoy everything that it has to offer. And yeah, it's still an amazing track, and still an amazing event, amazing venue. So yeah, I mean, it's just going to be really cool. See what these guys can manage. 12 drivers on the grid, and hopefully all 12 finish, as warm-up is just about to finish here. We'll see a couple people just finish their laps as we get going here on the grid as well. And yeah, I am excited, and I believe we are getting ready to go as I just cycle through the overlays. Trying to find a little bit of positions here, and I will jump on board with the grid here as well. We'll take a look at our pole man Lewis Archer here for a bit in that glorious GTR livery. Definitely a cool looking car, and that chrome reminds me a little bit of the old Mercedes. Used to be full chrome, I believe, back in the olden days. But yeah, here we are then on the grid for 34 laps here of Monza, and it's going to be a good one, and we're looking forward to it, absolutely. And yeah, we're going to see Lewis Archer lead us away, as we've got all all 5 lights on the grid. And here we are, green in Monza for the IFL F2 Championship. And it looks as though it was a good start from Lewis Archer here on the outside line. Chris Byram looking to try and maybe make it on the inside for turn number 1. Remember, it will turn to the outside of the second part of the chicane. Cesar Cabral and Carlos Quetal battling in the background, and it looks like Carlos Quetal was the one to get the most out of that one. Daniel Thomas also looking to maybe try and get involved, as we're still side by side battling behind with Alexander Carver-Robbins and Jake Potts maybe trying to make moves on each other, as it looks as though Lewis Archer and Chris Byram are going to battle once again into the chicane, and behind them we're going to see Cesar Cabral and Carlos Quetal going at it once more. And it looks as though everyone's starting to go a little bit single file now as we go into the first Lesmo and then going forward into the second Lesmo. It doesn't look like Cesar's going to look to make a move, but nothing doing there just yet, as it looks like everyone has managed to come pretty clean out of the first couple of corners. And I'm pretty sure here that Daniel Thomas needs to be careful, because if he's not, then he's going to see himself under attack from a swarm of cars behind him. As we go into the Ascari chicane for the first time, Daniel Thomas leads from Alexander Carver-Robbins. Alex Gutneck spinning off in the background, and there was someone else there in the background as well. Jake Potts in the wall, and I believe Chris Byram's also had an issue on the exit of the corner as well. So Chris Byram, absolutely devastating for him. He's now pumping himself down the order as Daniel Thomas is put up into 4th position. Carlos Quetal and Cesar Cabral 2nd and 3rd, with Lewis Archer still remaining in 1st place. And it looks as though Chris Byram just got on power a little bit too much there on the first chicane, and unfortunately wasn't able to make anything of it. And here we go, Cesar Cabral and Carlos Quetal battling into turn number 1. Can Carlos make the move done before the chicane? Looks like he's going to try to, but Cesar going up on the inside. Can he maybe make it stick? It doesn't look like he can. Great run out of that chicane for Carlos Quetal, and Daniel Thomas is now looking on the back of him, and looking on the back of them is Alexander Carver-Robbins a bit further back, with Rob there chasing him, with Lewis Colon chasing Rob, and then Curtis Martin following in behind. And here we go back into the chicane. Carlos Quetal and Cesar Cabral going side by side. It's so close between both of these drivers, as Cesar Cabral is trying to maybe look down the inside of the Lesmos, and he manages to do so. But if Carlos Quetal isn't careful, he's going to have Daniel Thomas to look after as well. And it looks as though Daniel Thomas is just sitting in behind for now. But Cesar Cabral making a very opportunistic move through the Lesmos and making it stick and making it work. Now, if he can run away through the Ascari chicane and maybe just try and use that dirty air through Ascari to slow down Carlos Quetal, then it looks like Cesar can maybe start to make a move away when Carlos is having to defend now from Daniel Thomas. And yeah, Chris Byram obviously is now trying to work his way back up the grid after spinning out there on the opening lap, as he's now chasing down Alex Gutneck through the Ascari chicane. I wonder if that car has any damage at all, or whether or not it was just a spin. But let's go back on board here with Carlos Quetal and Daniel Thomas, as Daniel Thomas is looking to maybe just try and sniff anything that he can, trying to get all the way on the back of that gearbox of Carlos Quetal, diving up to the inside now, as Carlos Quetal is going to maybe try and look for the move on the inside as well. And Carlos Quetal goes very defensive on the inside. Almost looked like he was going to maybe make the move on Cesar Cabral, but doesn't think anything of it. So again, these three settling in for now, and Cesar Cabral leading Carlos Quetal, leading Daniel Thomas, leading Rob Sluter, leading Alexander Carver-Robbins, who then leads from Lewis Colon, Curtis Martin behind them, with Chris Byram actually managing to get past Alex Gutneck now, and maybe these two work together. Obviously you wouldn't think it, being rivals here between the CUDA and the Lumos guys, but who knows, maybe Alex can manage to make some sort of moves for himself, just following Chris Byram's lines, as Rob has now let a couple cars through maybe, or had a little bit of a issue coming through maybe the second chicane, so dropped a couple more positions back down now into 8th place, but still gaining on the opening couple of laps. And Curtis Martin up 5 places off the start, so amazing job from him. I didn't catch all of them, as it looked like Lewis Colon was almost going to try and make a move into Ascari, which would have been a very daring move, and if he managed to make that one work, we would have been talking about that all week, I imagine. But no, just got to follow on for now, as Carlos Quetal is now having to defend from Daniel Thomas once again. again. Daniel Thomas looking up the inside of the Parabolica, but nothing doing just yet. He's just going to sit back once again, get the slipstream down into turn 1, and if he can make that move stick, then he's got Cesar Cabral to chase. And honestly, I'm thinking maybe these two guys should start to work together here, because the lap time differences between these two drivers battling it out versus the likes of Lewis Archer, who's just storming ahead, is just causing absolute pandemonium here. And I'm sure Daniel Thomas doesn't really want to work with Carlos Quetal, wants to battle Carlos to maybe benefit Lewis as well on pit strategy. But yeah, it is absolutely insane right now as Alex Gutneck comes in for his first pit stop. Wonder whether or not there was any damage done to his car, and that's why he's coming in maybe slightly earlier than he normally would do. But yeah, Daniel Thomas and Carlos Quetal currently battling out tooth and nail, as Alexander Carver-Robbins is starting to lose a little bit from Lewis Colon, not getting the greatest run out of the chicane. But one man who did get a good run out of the chicane is Rob here on your screens, and we're going to see whether or not he can send the move up the inside of the second Lesmos. He thought about it, but nothing doing just yet. Just going to sit behind Curtis Martin for now. Sit behind Curtis, that number 04 car, and wait to see if any opportunities presents itself, maybe into Ascari. But you've got to be very brave sending it. You've got to send it really early. Make sure the car ahead of you knows that you're sending it into Ascari. But no, he's just going to sit back for now, maybe get the slipstream, and if he can get a good run out of Ascari's, it looks like he did, maybe he's going to look towards the Parabolica, and with this slipstream, maybe he gets the move done even before the braking zone, which would be absolutely amazing. And oh my gosh, he's just gone absolutely off track to try and overtake him and into the wall. That is devastating from him. I'm not sure whether or not he wasn't expecting Curtis Martin to be so aggressive in his defense, but that is all sorts of damage, and maybe race over there for the number 52 of Rob, who's just come back into the league for the first time, as it looks as now we've got a move here on from Daniel Thomas, who does get touched by Carlos Quetal, it looked as though. And what that's going to mean is Daniel Thomas has now dropped another couple of positions behind Lewis Colon, and then behind Carlos Quetal's teammate Alexander Carver-Robbins as well. So that contact there may have affected Daniel Thomas to the point of where Carlos Quetal is now going to have some sort of penalty potentially to serve at the end of this race. So we'll look to see what incidents come of that, but it looks as though Daniel Thomas is now going to have to drive really aggressive, going to have to drive and really get past this car of Alexander Carver-Robbins. Knows he's quicker, and if he can get past, then he can start setting his sights back on Carlos Quetal, who I'm pretty sure had an unfortunate contact, wasn't expecting him maybe to be so slow on the apex. And I think Daniel Thomas just came across to maybe just try and block the return there from Carlos Quetal, but we'll have to take a look back at that incident at some point and see whether or not there was anything doing, as it looks as though Lewis Colon had a really interesting line there on Carlos Quetal. I'm not sure if Carlos has any damage, and it looks like he might do. Carlos might have a bit of damage here and potentially suffering with damage through Ascari, as it looks as though that wing is all sorts of out of shape, and he's having to go very slow through the Parabolica. So I imagine that is going to be Carlos Quetal coming into the pit lane, and indeed that is what happens, and that promotes Lewis Colon now up into third position here of this race, which then means that he has gained 4 positions off the start, and as such we're going to see Lewis Colon take maybe a third position here in this F2 race at Monza, which will be an amazing result for him. Absolutely incredible result. And one man who is currently running away with it is Lewis Archer with a 136.48 best lap so far. His last lap, for comparison, a 136.54. So he has consistency absolutely nailed, and he is trying everything he can to just absolutely run away with it, and he's doing that very, very well indeed. And if he can run away with it, I think we may see Lewis Archer start to really put the pressure on for maybe leading the championship near the end of this, but he's going to have to do a lot of work to do so. Obviously, Cesar Cabral is just going to keep putting in second place, third place results if Lewis Archer keeps winning. So the point deficit isn't going to come down as quickly as Lewis would probably like it to. But yeah, we'll see how that battle develops over the course of the season, as we will jump on board with Chris Byram as he starts to look on the back of Curtis Martin as well. I believe we will see a move shape up here after Ascari, maybe into Parabolica or potentially into turn number 1, and we'll see if any move gets made. I don't think it'll be made into the Parabolica, but I have been proven once before, wrong once before, so maybe it'll be proven wrong again. As it looks like Chris Byram does send it up the inside of the Parabolica, and it's a very brave move to try and make. Keeps it on the inside line nice and tight, gets a good run on the exit, but is it going to be enough? Obviously holding it the long way around, Curtis Martin might also get a very good run, and we're going to see now it's a drag race into turn number 1, and we'll see who's running the lowest downforce. We'll see who's got the bigger engine, who's got the heaviest right foot. We're going into the braking zone. Chris Byram holds the inside line nicely, and who is that's just spun? I believe that potentially was Daniel Thomas, and it was. Daniel Thomas has ended up spinning, now down into 7th place after some sort of incident from himself. So I'm not sure whether or not he lost it into turn number 1 under braking and potentially locked the rears, and he's spun around. But what that means is now Daniel Thomas is now behind Chris Byram, and Chris Byram has just been promoted 2 positions after overtaking Curtis Martin and then overtaking Daniel Thomas off track as well, with Lewis Archer also, by the way, for those of you keeping track of fastest laps, does set a new fastest lap with a 1:36.46. So Lewis Archer is definitely making a name for himself, and he is a whopping 1 second quicker than anyone else on track right now. So yeah, Lewis Archer is making himself known this session, and really wants to prove to everyone else that he can absolutely gun it when he wants to, and he knows that he can lead this championship. And he's just done another 1:36.5, so whatever that lap time was, that 1:36.4, it's also consistent for him as well, so double trouble. And we will jump on board with him a little bit and just see what he's doing differently as he gets a little bit of a slide there out of the first chicane. We're going through the Curva Grande absolutely flat out, and you know what, I'm going to shut up a little bit. We're going to get on board with Lewis Archer, and you guys can see just what it's like to wrestle this car around Monza from a driver's perspective. And going through Ascari there was Lewis Archer, and I'll tell you what, that corner is absolutely mega. And it is just one of those corners that just is absolutely amazing when you get it right. And I believe we've just had an incident here from Alex Gutnecht. I'm not sure whether or not there was a crash there from himself or just a light spin, but he has now been overtaken by Rob in that number 52 car. So Rob is now back ahead, and it looks as though Alexander Carver-Robbins is going to have to start defending from Chris Byram. And I believe that was Curtis Martin getting it all sorts of wrong on the exit of Ascari as well. So yeah, now we're going to see potentially Curtis Martin losing a few more positions, and indeed he has done that. He is now down into 7th after he was, I believe, 5th at one point as well. But let's jump back on board here with Chris Byram, who is setting up a move on Alexander Carver-Robbins, and Alexander Carver-Robbins is going to have to try and defend the long way around the outside, and Chris Byram just under braking, making it look easy. And I'll tell you what, doing that under braking is not that easy, and he made it look effortless. So Chris Byram doing an amazing job to get away, but now he's got to really start putting in those lap times that we know he can do to really try and catch up to the back of Louis Quillon as well. So we'll see whether or not he can do so. We'll see whether or not Chris can actually start to push away from Alex. Obviously, we are aware that the slipstream here is quite powerful, so maybe we find a incident in which Alex can keep on the back of Chris, and if he can keep on the back, then maybe we see Alex get promoted up into 4th position near the end of this race, as Alex Gutnecht here is battling here, I believe, with Rob here in the number 52 car, and Rob doing an amazing job on defending, sort of almost pushing Alex to the outside there. So Alex Gutnecht having to try and get handsy with having to try and get it all elbows out with Rob, and not able to find anywhere to get past just yet, as Lewis Archer just sets another fastest lap and proves that he's here to win, boys. He knows exactly what he's trying to do, and I'll tell you what, some very respectful racing between these two. Alex Gutnecht and Rob Sluter definitely showing that you can get side by side through these chicanes, and as long as you've got respect for each other, then you can absolutely get some great racing involved. As, oh no, it looks like he was trying to set a move on the exit of the Lesmos, and unfortunately Alex didn't see him on the outside and didn't really have anywhere to go, and unfortunately Rob banged wheels with him and gets sent flying into the barrier. So potentially we may see Rob have to go back into the pits again with more damage, and if that's the case, then we may see Rob indeed retire from this race, as it looks like he does get teleported now back to the pit lane. So yeah, potentially we're going to see him out of this race. And I want to see whether or not Carlos Cataldo can overtake Don Satterfield here for that 9th position. Obviously, Carlos did have an early incident touching, I believe it was another driver, I want to say, of potentially Rob. Those two getting together, or it could have been one of the GTR guys of Daniel Thomas, I believe. Those two getting together, and then I believe Carlos Cataldo got off a little bit worse. Came back to the pits, managed to repair his car, so he's back out there again, and I'm wondering whether or not he is able to make any moves up. But he does gain a position from Alex Gutnecht's pitting, so I wonder whether or not Alex is pit early once more, as Lewis Archer, once again, is almost into the 135s. So I wonder whether or not Lewis Archer is now just flexing and just saying, you know what, boys, I'm going to go for a quali runs for the rest of this race, because he is 1 second faster than anyone else on track right now. Almost 1.5 seconds quicker than anyone else on track. That is absolutely ludicrous. And if I didn't know better, I would say he was smurfing. Honestly, I genuinely think that he deserves, or I say deserves, he should be probably in a higher division, because this is a bit ridiculous now. He's done this a few races, and he just knows something about Monza that the rest of us don't, apparently. He knows something about this Formula Renault car that the rest of them don't, so whether or not he's just using his DRSs where everyone else might be saving them could also be a possibility. But we'll wait and see later on if anyone else decides to try and go for fastest lap. Obviously, Cesar Cabral might try it, not battling with anyone right now. And then Lewis Colon, maybe we'll see him attempt it. But again, that will depend whether or not Chris Byram can catch up near the end of the race, as well as Alexander Carver-Robbins can catch up to any of those guys as well. But yeah, it looks as though we kind of know what the order is going to be for the rest of this race, at least as far as first place is concerned. I don't think Cesar Cabral can really touch him at the moment, as Lewis Archer does now come into the pit lane and does start to pit. So I'm wondering whether or not Lewis is pitting early just in case of a safety car potentially. And if we see a safety car, then we may end up with the field obviously bunching back up, and if that happens, then he needs to make sure that he has enough tyres left to really start to push, or whether or not he's pitting to go onto a new set of fresh tyres, because all of that quali pace running has put him in a situation where he might need to really start to save the rest of the tyres for the rest of this race. So he does come out in 4th position, so we'll see whether or not there's anyone else who's going to potentially make any moves, and I believe he will also have his teammate behind him now, and Lewis Colon, or is this Dan? This might be Don, as Don did spin there. So that was Don Satterfield that they just went past. So Lewis Archer is now going to be giving his teammate a bit of a tow, I believe, behind him, or that could be the... Actually, no, that could be Alex Gutnecht just come out of the pit lane potentially as well. So, yeah, I believe that's Alex Gutnecht who's behind Lewis Archer for now. And what that'll mean is Lewis Archer does set himself quite nicely here for the rest of this race. Obviously, a 20-second gap near enough to Cesar Cabral. And that 20-second gap will be abolished by the end of Cesar Cabral's pit stop. the pit lane time was quite lengthy there on Lewis's pit stop. I'm wondering whether or not he underfueled the car at the beginning to maybe get a really good run off the start, or just ran less fuel and so had to put in more fuel and risk that longer stop. Obviously, if he can get away and he can set these really quick lap times, then who knows, maybe that was all in the plan. So I'll have to ask him about that one and see whether or not there was just a potential missed pit box. But we see Lewis Colon also responding to Lewis Archer there by pitting on the next lap, so Lewis will go back into third position with Lewis coming back into the pits. So Lewis and Louis, two very similar names, spelt very differently. So yep, so that is indeed what has happened. Lewis Archer is now back up into third place. Louis Colon now down into 5th position, potentially coming out in 6th depending on how long this pit stop takes from him. So we'll wait and see where he comes out. Well, it doesn't look like he's going to have too much trouble from Alexander Carver-Robbins, who is just coming through the Parabolica now. And you see him just in the background there, going down the start-finish straight. So Louis Colon now in 5th position and looking to gain a position on Daniel Thomas when Daniel finally comes into the pits for his first stop. And we've only had 13 laps, so we're not even halfway through yet. But it looks as though most of the field have already pit. Cesar Cabral, Chris Byram and Daniel Thomas have yet to pit. Curtis Martin also yet to pit. But everyone else has pit. We've had Lewis Archer pit on lap 11, Louis Colon pit on lap 12 in response to Lewis Archer, Alexander Carver-Robbins pit on lap 11, as we see Louis unfortunately get a little bit of drift on there through the Lesmos, so not great for his tyres, and I'm sure he's not going to be very happy about that one, so he's going to have to save them a little bit longer for the rest of this race and potentially risk having that having those tires go off near the end of the race. But that's unfortunately the call you make when you pit early. You know, you eventually get into a situation where you have you've got to manage your tires and you've got to make them work, and having little incidents like that, you know, if you're getting those in 1 of every 10 laps even, then you may find that your tires get a little bit dirty. So you know, he's weaving just to try and clean them up a little bit, make sure he's got enough grip, warm them up as well a little bit, to see whether or not he can just find the grip on the outlap. So yeah, I'm trying to just make sure he didn't pit, or rather didn't have control of the car there on the colder tires. So 5th position for him right now, as I say, will be promoted up into 4th when Thomas pits, and maybe back into 3rd potentially when Chris Byram and Cesar Cabral pit. So I believe that's his teammate there of Don, just letting him through. So, and then I believe Don is letting through Alexander Carver-Robbins, who is behind Lewis Colon. So that little spin has now meant that Alexander can get up close, and potentially we'll see a battle here for the first time in a little while, as Alexander Carver-Robbins is going to try and chase him down into the second chicane after the Curva Grande. Under the bridge here we go, and then into the chicane, hopping the curbs as much as you dare. Obviously you want to try and use as much of the track as possible to go as fast as possible, but you also need to make sure that you don't have any incidents and potentially break your car over the curbs, as well as going through the second Lesmo. It looks like Alexander Carver-Robbins has all the grip in the world in comparison to Louis Colon, who is currently having to defend as much as he can. Obviously now going down the start-finish straight, we were maybe going to see a move into Ascari, and looked as though Alexander was going to send it, but I think of more of just a, hey, I am here, I'm in your mirrors, I'm going to weave around a little bit so you pay attention to me, maybe make a mistake through into the braking zone of Ascari, so I can maybe make a run into the Parabolica. But what that's done now is let Lewis Colon know that you are close, and he's now going to start looking defensive, looking to break the toe as much as he can, as Alexander Carver-Robbins will try and follow him through the Parabolica, now down into the first corner here of the Monza circuit. And if he can keep in the slipstream, we may see this move on. He is a bit far back, 0.6 of a second back, but that slipstream, we're going to start seeing it put in work, and he's going to start getting closer and closer, but not quite close enough into turn number 1. And it does look like Lewis Colon potentially missed his braking zone there into turn 1, having to cut over the curbs, and that will promote Alexander Carver-Robbins now up into 5th position. position, which does mean that Louis Colon drops back into 6th, and Alexander Carver-Robbins currently gaining 3 positions off the start of the race. So amazing drive from him so far, going into the second chicane now, doing a great job at defending from any moves there from Louis Colon, and having to get a good run here through the Lesmos to make sure you can break that toe. Break that sort of 1 second mark is when we say it really starts being effective, and if you can break that 1 second barrier, then you can really start to just push away and start to gap and start to push to see if you can catch the car in front of you, who is currently quite far ahead. Daniel Thomas 23 seconds ahead, so potentially Alexander Carver-Robbins is just looking to consolidate his position here in 5th position, and if he can, you know, great result from him. You know, Carlos Guitao unfortunately having some issues, who is his teammate, so having to fly that Auriga Motorsport banner, as it were. Louis Colon is also trying to maybe make a move here through the Parabolica. Alexander Carver-Robbins cutting across, but Louis Colon going for the up and under, sells him the dummy a little bit there, and Alexander Carver-Robbins took it in full swing. And what that's going to mean is Alexander Carver-Robbins does get a good exit, but Louis Colon did get the absolutely amazing entry to the corner. So let's see what happens here into turn number 1. Alexander Carver-Robbins up the inside. Is he going to be able to outdo him under braking? It looks like Louis Colon does manage to get that braking sorted this time round and get a very clean run through the chicane on the exit. A little bit squirmy. We'll see whether or not that leads to any sort of action here, as Alexander Carver-Robbins through Curva Grande will follow as tight as possible to that white line, trying to cut as much of the track off as possible to maybe make a move here into the second chicane, and it doesn't look like he's quite close enough, but affecting Lewis's line enough to where he has to jump over that chicane. What that's going to mean is Alexander Carver-Robbins is going to look inside the Lesmo for the first time, and we're going to see whether or not the respect is given on the exit of the Lesmo. Very easy to maybe make the car there have a little bit of an issue, and still side by side through the second Lesmo, and Lewis holding it the long way around the outside is an amazing job of making that stick. And I'll tell you what, that is one move for the record books this race. Holding around the outside of the second Lesmos is not easy, but respect to Louis Colon for managing to do that and do it against a driver like Alexander Carver-Robbins, who we know is going to be pushing as hard as he can to defend and attack as hard as he can, because he wants that 5th position. As Alexander Carver-Robbins now maybe sets up a move here into the Parabolica, but doesn't really attack for now. He instead opts to set himself up for a move into turn 1. Obviously a lot harder to defend the turn 1 move than it is to defend the Parabolica move, especially if you overtake them in the Parabolica. Then they have the slipstream all the way down into turn number 1, so potentially holding off and using the slipstream as much as he can, maybe using a bit of DRS there as well. Out braking into turn number 1, we'll see who has the better brakes, and it looks like Louis Colon manages to get that braking absolutely nailed, and as such the gap has just extended massively there on the exit of the corner. So I think Alexander Carver-Robbins giving himself a bit too much respect on the brakes, whereas Louis Colon absolutely nailed it that lap. And and what that means is that gap now has extended to that 1 second window, to where potentially Alexander is not going to be able to fight back as easily as he'd like to. And if that happens, then obviously we may see Alexander Carver-Robbins start to drop back and maybe fall back into the likes of Carlos Guitao later on in this race. Obviously you want to try and make sure that you can keep as close as possible, because anytime you're not in the slipstream of another car, you are losing time around here, around Monza, as Chris Byram does finally come into the pit lane for his first lap, just over the halfway mark of this race. So we are now seeing Chris Byram exit the pit lane. I believe he's just up on the jacks now, and what that means is he's now dropped into 4th position, with Daniel Thomas and Cesar Cabral yet to pit. And I don't think Chris Byram's going to exit out behind Louis Colon. It looks like he managed to get that gap really nice and sorted out. So Chris Byram now 14 seconds off the back of Lewis Archer, and one man who's actually managed to get quite a significant gap and managed to actually extend maybe the gap that was set coming out of the pit lane is Cesar Cabral. I've been just keeping an eye on it every now and then just to see if anything has happened, but it looks as though Cesar Cabral has managed to find some sort of time from somewhere and really start to push in the second part of his stint, to extend as much as he can, maybe make it so that he can attack Lewis near the second part of this race. And if that can happen, then we may see a battle here for first place position, as I believe that is Curtis Martin there spinning around in the background and coming off the barrier, all sorts of wrong, going back on the track as well. Thankfully there was no cars close enough to deal any sort of damage, but we've had 2 DNFs so far in this race. Potentially now this will be a 3rd and possibly 4th DNF in this race as well, with Alex Gutnecht being in the pits and also Curtis Martin being in the pits as well. So 4 potential DNFs here at Monza. We did say there would be action, we did say that there would be chaos, and it's proving like that is the case so far, but not because of any car-to-car contacts. It doesn't look like it. Looks as though it was primarily people losing it by themselves out of Ascari and having to find some sort of way to get the car back to the pit lane, which is not that easy. So what that means is Carlos Gattal is now up to 7th place after a few people ahead of him have unfortunately met an untimely end into the wall, as Lewis Archer does a bit of curb hopping there as well, and decides to just see how well his car can fly. Apparently well enough to where he can get back on track and continue going and not end up finding himself in a wall, like most other drivers are seeming to find currently through Ascari. Those sausage curbs in Ascari, obviously with it being such a quick corner, very, very brutal corner as well, and meaning that you've got absolutely no margin for error here through Ascari. You've got the inside curbs of the first part of the corner, inside curbs of the second part of the corner that are raised up higher than the first, so you can take the first a little bit, but you've got to be careful on the second. And then through the third part of the corner you do have again another raised curbing on the inside, and then on the exit it's nice and flat, so you can run it over, but you've got to try and be careful you don't run it off too much, because otherwise you'll end up being in a situation where you'll get off-track penalties as well. So always something to consider, is there seems to be quite a few off-tracks for a couple of these drivers. I believe Chris Byram is the one with the least so far, so potentially safest driver point going the way of Chris Byram, and fastest lap going the way of Lewis Archer, although Cesar Cabral is starting to find some time, so potentially we may see Cesar Cabral start to really extend the gap and potentially go for a glory run near the end of this race and see if he can get the fastest lap back from Lewis Archer, which, if that happens, even more points for Cesar Cabral, and again a harder time for Lewis Archer to try and take that championship away from Cesar Cabral. Obviously leading it currently is a big deal for Cesar, so he wants to try and keep there as close as he can. The person who is closest to him in points right now, Chris Byram, in 3rd, so the gap between Cesar Cabral and Chris Byram is going to extend. Was only 2 points before this race, but will be extended out a little bit further, I imagine, by the end of this race, obviously with 25 points going to the leader and then 18 going to 2nd, with 15 going to 3rd. So if it finishes as it stands right now, keep in mind Cesar Cabral still needs to pit, so you know he's on lap 21 and those tires must be absolutely screaming at him to maybe go and get them changed at some point. I imagine he'll come in as late as he can. Obviously if he's still doing quick lap times, and a 1:37 flat seems quick enough so far, if he can extend the gap and get that pit stop to make sure that he doesn't have to worry about Chris Byram and can just focus on Lewis Archer at the end of this race, then who knows, maybe Cesar can give himself enough laps to fight with Lewis near the end of the race. But I think it's going to be a tall order. You know, we look at about 30 seconds pit lane time, so when he comes in, if he's stationary for 8 seconds, then potentially you know, you look at a loss of 20 seconds. So who knows, we'll see. Obviously there was a gap of, I believe, about 5 seconds before Lewis Archer came into the pit lane between him and Cesar Cabral, and then on exit it looked like the gap extended there to like 20 seconds when Lewis came out of the pit lane, so 15-second loss if it's going by that metric. And if that's the case, then Cesar, in theory, has a free pit stop, but we'll wait and see whether or not he does decide to come in, and let's jump on board with him, see whether or not he comes in on lap number 22 of 34 as he comes round the parabolica for hopefully the final time on these sets of tires. Otherwise he's just going to keep pounding around this circuit. I'm pretty sure he realizes that there is a mandatory pit stop, so whether or not he's just going to try and do it on the last lap, and he's just set a new personal best, so he thinks there's still life on these tires. 136.820, not fast enough to be the fastest lap of the race. That is still held by Lewis Archer with a 136.14, so Lewis Archer currently doing a pretty good job there on fastest lap, and I don't think it's going to be challenged too easily. I'm pretty sure he was using DRSs on those laps as well. Obviously, you do have 8 uses, and oh, Cesar Cabral getting it all sorts of wrong. Maybe the commentator's curse coming into effect as we were talking about those tires, and I think that potentially is going to be a cause for coming into the pit lane this time by, and what that's going to mean is the gap that he had once established maybe comes down a little bit as well, as we look to see if Lewis Archer does find a bit more time here through the chicane. And indeed, once iRacing sorts itself out, we do see that that sort of time that he did find being up at like that 22-second gap is now abolished down to 17 seconds. So he lost quite a few there, 5 seconds on that mistake alone, which is not good, and I'm sure we'll see him coming in for the pits this time by. So we'll stick on board with Lewis Archer and see whether or not we can see Cesar Cabral either in the mirrors or ahead of him after the pit stop, but I think it will be quite far behind now, as Lewis Archer will come around the Parabolica, and again, once again, we're seeing Cesar Cabral continue. So this is now lap 23 of 34. He's got 11 laps left. There is a mandatory pit stop time, and if he can stick it out right to the end of this race, I still think we may find him, depending on where his pit box is, we may find him being overtaken on the final lap by Lewis Archer. However, speaking of action on track, we're actually going to see some on-track action between Lewis Colon and Daniel Thomas. I'm not sure if Daniel Thomas maybe had a little bit of an incident. I'm just checking over to see if I can see anything. I believe he came out of the pits a little while ago, but I don't think there was any sort of incident there. So, yeah, Daniel Thomas coming out of the pits on lap 19, so I don't think there was any sort of incidents. I think Lewis Colon has just managed to do it on pace, and going up the inside, here we go, Lewis Colon up the inside of the chicane, looking now to go around the outside of the second part of the chicane, get a really good run off the exit, but not quite good enough as Daniel Thomas looks to defend as hard as he can, takes the inside line of the Curva Grande, which is flat out in these cars, don't really have to worry about it at all, and this is going to be an amazing shot on board with Lewis Colon as he tries to send it up the inside of the chicane, misses his braking zone, cuts Daniel Thomas off completely, rides the curb as well on the exit, has to avoid the sand and being very careful to not cut him up going into the first Lesmo, and maybe taking all of the track there on the exit of the first Lesmo and losing back that position on Daniel Thomas. So once again, we're going to see whether or not he can maybe make a move here into Ascari, having to follow as much as he can in the slipstream, and if these two aren't careful, Alexander Carver-Robbins is behind them, so we may see a three-way battle for fourth near the end of this race, and Cesar Cabral now does pit, so he is now out of the pits in second position pretty comfortably, but I don't think that gap is going to be too easy to overcome. And here we go on board with Lewis Colon, seeing whether or not he can keep this pressure on Daniel Thomas and keep Daniel Thomas having to push every single lap, and if he can, maybe puts him into a mistake as well. Lewis Colon now with the slipstream down here into turn number 1. We'll see whether or not any moves can be made, the slipstream being very powerful, maybe DRS being used as well, but it doesn't look like it. Into turn 1, nothing doing just yet. He's going to sit behind, maybe use the slipstream through Curva Grande, maybe use the DRS even through Curva Grande, Grande and see whether or not he can make a move into the second chicane here. And if he can, then run away through the Lesmos. He knows he's quicker through the Lesmos than Daniel Thomas, so he's maybe going to try and use that, looking for the move there into the second chicane, but Daniel Thomas not biting just yet, and Lewis Colon having to just follow him through once again. And what this means is Daniel Thomas is now ahead into the first Lesmo, gets a really clean run through the first Lesmo, kicks up a bit of dust on the exit, so a little bit too wide than where he would have liked to have been, but gets a clean run through the second Lesmo as well, going down now the back straight before Ascari, and we're going to see whether or not Louis Colon can make any moves. Daniel Thomas being very defensive, breaking the toe into Ascari. It looks as though Lewis is just going to try and keep on the back. And if he can keep close enough, we may see a move here into turn number 1 again. But he has to be close in Parabolica. He has to get close through Parabolica. He has to keep as much speed as he can with the dirty air through Parabolica and see whether or not he can be close enough to make a move then into turn number 1. And here we go through Parabolica, and he's spun it round in Parabolica, a little bit too early on throttle, a little bit too eager on throttle, and he is around. And once again, we said he pit early. He had that incident on cold tires, and I think that's maybe now coming back to bite him later in this race. It's been 10 laps on these tires, maybe even 13 laps on these tires, and having that little incident now twice means those tires are probably going to overheat and he's going to start losing grip absolutely everywhere. And what that means now is that Lewis Colon has lost those few positions now to Daniel Thomas and Alexander Carver-Robbins just when it looked like they were starting to pull away from Alex behind. And what that means is Daniel Thomas can get a much needed break from that, as well as Alexander does currently have the most positions gained so far of anyone. I believe Don Satterfield is the only other one to gain positions here who is still running, as Lewis Archer is now starting to put back on the pressure on Cesar Cabral, is starting to gap Cesar Cabral a bit further as well, just setting a 137.133 there on his lap, and we'll see what Cesar Cabral can do when he comes across the line as well, see if it's sort of matching or whether or not he can reduce the deficit a little bit. But I don't think there's going to be enough laps left. I think we only have 8 laps left of this race, so he's going to probably need to find at least 2 seconds a lap. So Cesar, mate, if you have 135s in your locker, now is the time to show it. Now is the time to absolutely send it, because you're going to need everything you can get to catch up to the back of Lewis Archer. And it looks as though he's just managing to do a 137.04, so unfortunately not quite quick enough to offset that gap. So it's looking as though the order is going to be Lewis Archer, Cesar Cabral and Chris Byram, unless there's any sort of incidents from these top 3 guys. And one person who is kind of likely to get close and who could potentially cause an upset near the end of this race is Chris Byram and Cesar Cabral together. Those two, if Cesar has a little mistake again, as we've seen him have through the second chicane a few times, then Chris Byram potentially is going to have an incident where Chris will be battling with Cesar, and if Cesar is caught napping, as it were, because he hasn't had to battle too much this race, then Chris could maybe cause an upset here and finish second in this race, which again would be great for the point standings. I believe that would put Chris Byram ahead of Cesar Cabral in the championships, provided there's no extra safest driver point or fastest lap point goes to either of them. Just on the raw standings alone, I believe Chris Byram would be ahead of Cesar Cabral near the end if Chris Byram does get past Cesar Cabral, but it's a long way to go and it is a very difficult thing to achieve. Chris would need to be doing low 36s every lap for the rest of this race. He would need to be doing qualifying runs for the rest of this race if he wants to catch up to the back of Cesar Cabral. And he has gone quicker than Cesar, but only by 0.2. So that 5-second gap is looking to be a little bit insurmountable towards the end of this race. So yeah, Chris Byram, unfortunately, I think settling here for 3rd position. But again, can't really grumble. It's another podium. It's still keeping it close between yourself and Cesar Cabral. Yes, the points maybe not going in the way that you would like it to. You want to be ahead of your rival, obviously, but what that will mean is that Lewis Archer will take home the most amount of points, provided no unfortunate incidents happen here in the rest of this race. And, you know, Lewis Archer is then going to start to look like a true championship contender with quite a few wins under his belt here now. So Lewis Archer, I think, trying to maybe make a statement here and go for back-to-backs in the F2 championship. And yeah, I mean, there doesn't seem to be anyone else who can stop him, especially in qualifying results so far. Looks like he's managed to find a pace in this Formula Renault 3.5 car that no one else can really manage. And hey, if that's how it's going to be, then everyone else needs to sort of maybe step up a little bit and get some more practice in, because otherwise we're going to see Lewis Archer start winning the rest of these races and sort of cruise home for a championship win, as Chris Byram does again set a new fastest lap for himself. So starting to really put pressure on Cesar Cabral, but again, I think it's just going to be a little bit too late. Obviously, we've now only got a couple laps left of this race, as Daniel Thomas does just set a 1:36.72, so really good lap from him. Wondering where that was earlier. And yeah, I think he's managed to finally find the time in the setup that Lewis Archer managed to find as well. So potentially some DRS usage helping him on that lap to get that sort of lap time, but even still, that's a pretty good lap there from Daniel Thomas. And hey, if he can keep up with that sort of lap times, then who knows? Maybe we'll see him fighting amongst the top guys next race out, which let's see where we are next week, just while we're in a little bit of a lull in the racing. I can get that calendar up for you all, and we can talk about what's next for the season. As remember, tomorrow we do have the F3 and the F1 as well, so we will have both championships on. And having both championships on will mean that the F3 is done slightly earlier. I believe it will be around 5 PM UK time is when the qualifying will start, which is when the broadcast will be live. So convert that to wherever you are in the world. If you're in more of the other parts of Europe, potentially plus 1 hour, plus 2 hours on that, or if you're in America, probably -5 on that one. So more around midday for everyone else. But next time out will be the 23rd, and I believe that will be week 8 at Spa. So from what I've heard, last season, Lewis Archer had a great result at Spa last season and did just an absolute tear like he's doing today. So potentially, we're going to need to see whether or not Lewis can find any sort of, anyone else can find any sort of pace to catch up to the back of him, because if not, we may find a situation in where Lewis Archer does take this round, does take week 8, and then we go over to Watkins Glen for week 9, followed off by the German Grand Prix, Hockenheim in week 10, Red Bull Ring for the Austrian Grand Prix in week 11, Circuit Gilles Villeneuve for week 12, the Canadian Grand Prix circuit, and then Zandvoort for week 13, following off the schedule with the week 14 at Silverstone. So plenty of amazing circuits left to come, and yeah, I'm excited to see where the rest of this season goes and see whether or not Lewis can, even though he missed one race, scored 0 points in that race because he missed it, whether or not he can still come back and win this championship. Obviously 4 laps left of this race. It's looking like this is going to be another one in the record books for himself as another win. So yeah, Lewis Archer doing an amazing job controlling the race from start to finish. Only reason that Cesar Cabral may have led a few more laps is because he just went longer on the strategy. You know, Lewis Archer pit on lap 11, pit early, avoided the safety car carnage, and then Cesar Cabral pit on lap 23, latest guy to come into the pits. So yeah, it looks as though Cesar Cabral was just able to just push away from it, and just Cesar managing to finish in that second place. Did a really good job extending the stints, was really pushing the lap times as well later on into the stints, which was very surprising. But yeah, definitely something that we'll see from Cesar Cabral going forward. I'm pretty sure he's going to have to try and find some more pace going into Spa moving forward. And you know, he's a very passionate guy. We've seen this before. We saw it at Brazil. Still remember that interview after he won that race. It was absolutely amazing. He was absolutely pumped up. So yeah, Cesar Cabral, an absolutely amazing guy, amazing racer. So I really want to see what Cesar and Lewis can do later in this season, and when they start battling together, we'll see whether or not sparks fly in a metaphorical sense. Obviously, we don't want them in the physical sense, because if we do, then potentially maybe a few words said after the races. But yeah, Lewis Archer so far just setting more quali style laps here with a 136.63, and just trying to extend the gap to Cesar Cabral a little bit more. Cesar Cabral answers back with 136.89, 869, sorry. So not quite close enough to really put a dent in that deficit, but again, just sort of pushing near the end of the race here. I believe a lot of these drivers are just going to go for fastest lap now with not much battling happening. I think Carlos Guitao is going to be doing the same, as he does go fastest through the first sector, green in sector 2 and sector 3. So we'll wait and see whether or not Carlos Guitao potentially puts in a new fastest lap of this race. Would need to be a 136.14, which I believe would be faster than his quali time. So if he can manage to do that, then we'll see a very, very good lap from himself as he does come across the line. Let's see what he can manage. That is a 136.630, so it is a new personal best for Carlos Guitao, but it doesn't look like it was fast enough. The fastest lap just yet. Would still have to find 5/10, which seems to be a common theme that we've had this race, with trying to find 5/10 on Lewis Archer. Obviously that was the gap in quali, and now seems to be the gap on the fastest lap of the race as well. So Lewis somehow finding time that doesn't seem to be there for anyone else. So yeah, once again, Lewis doing an amazing job, and Cesar Cabral just not having an answer today. Chris Byram not having an answer, but both of them getting pretty good results for themselves as well, just avoiding the carnage. And unfortunately to Carlos Guitao, who has yet another string of bad luck in these races, and obviously puts himself in a situation where he may actually start losing championship points to Louis Colon as well, who is currently ahead of him, P5 in the standings. Louis Colon doing a very good job, and Daniel Thomas as well, Lewis Archer's teammate, doing a very good job to be there up in 4th and actually keeping pace with the leaders near the end of this race. So it looks as though we've had some pretty nice results from some drivers that we normally don't get to see a lot. So yeah, the likes of, for example, Daniel Thomas, Louis Colon, Alexander Carver-Robbins normally are outshunned by their sort of teammates sometimes. Obviously Louis maybe not so much, but Daniel Thomas definitely having to keep up with a teammate like Lewis Archer, and then Alexander Carver-Robbins keeping up with Carlos Guitao as a teammate as well. Normally we see those guys battling it so hard that we never really get to appreciate the fact that their teammates are also doing a stellar job. And this isn't just a driver's championship, this is also a team's championship. So if, for example, like today, where Carlos Guitao just hasn't had a good race, if Alexander Carver-Robbins can step up and take those couple of points that he otherwise wouldn't have got, then for a team championship, that's a pretty good result. You know, you're looking at a pretty good string of racing where, yeah, you may not have had the results you wanted, especially not for Carlos Guitao. You know, he would have wanted to be up there in 4th, maybe 5th position, but finishing 7th and 6th at least is going to bring home points for the team. At least both of you have scored points for the team. I believe anyone who does finish the race here now will also score points. So with only 8 drivers left and 4 DNFs. So yeah, it's been a race of attrition here at Monza, and one man who has managed that very well has been Lewis Archer with an 18-second gap over Cesar Cabral. So not really finding much in the way of things to really do, I imagine. Lewis Archer's just sort of doing his thing, setting the pace, maybe just trying to see if he can find some sort of time race pace wise sort of settle into a rhythm and just bring it home. You know, he's got an 18-second gap. Probably afford to ease off a little bit as well on the final lap and just relax. But we'll see whether or not he decides to go for a quali run here at the end to just push that fastest lap even higher up. And if he manages to do that, then I mean we're probably going to be looking at a 1:35 lap from him again, which I can't get over how ridiculous that would be if we see that. But here we go, final lap of the race. Lewis Archer is now going into turn number 1. We will keep on board with him and see whether or not he improves at all, with Carlos Gatau going purple through Sector 1 and Sector 2. So I think potentially Carlos Gatau may have found something. Sorry, timing screen's a little bit bugged there, as Carlos Gatau isn't actually purple through Sector 1 and Sector 2. He's just purple through Sector 1 and green through Sector 2, as Lewis Archer had a little bit of lag there. Glad to see he is back. But yeah, glad to see he's back, and that could have been a very dramatic end to the race. Caught me a little bit by surprise there, as Cesar Cabral is now still in second place, so the timings are going to be a little bit bugged for a little while, I think. But they look like they're back on track, as Chris Byram also now gets the little bit of bug where Lewis Archer just disappeared and decided to go somewhere else for a little bit before coming back to finish this race. As through the Ascari for the final time, Lewis Archer coming through near the end of the race. Is he going to be able to finish it out in style? He hasn't gone purple or improved in any sector, so I can't imagine he will set a new fastest lap of the race. But Carlos Gatau did manage to improve. Still not quick enough for fastest lap, but coming home to win here at the Italian Grand Prix is Lewis Archer, bringing home the win for GTR Revolution here in the F2 IFL Season 3, round number 7. Lewis Archer brings it home for that first position, and doing it in an absolutely dominating fashion. Cesar Cabral comes home for second place here, and again a pretty good drive from Cesar, doing a pretty good job there to just finish in second, and then Chris Byram coming home to finish third, and then Daniel Thomas coming through here near the end of this race to finish in fourth. And I believe that's Don Satterfield ahead of him, who will finish the race here in P8. And then we take a look at Louis Colon, finishes the race here in 5th position. Obviously, unofficial results, just in case there could be potentially penalties to serve as well. And here we are, the two Ariga guys, Alexander Carver-Robbins and Carlos Gatau, both together. Are they going to cross the line together? Let's wait and see. I wonder whether or not Carlos Gatau is potentially going to ease off, and those two are just going to go side by side together. I want to see if I can get a nice little camera of this, as Carlos Gatau does indeed come home to finish behind his teammate there in 7th, and do a little bit of a flyby with both of them. So that'll be it here for the race. Lewis Archer taking a very dominating win, with Cesar Cabral there in 2nd and Chris Byram in 3rd. And once again, a race that is, I mean, yeah, it was good for Lewis Archer. He didn't really have much in the way of any incidents, you know. He had a great result, as the qualifying results there still loaded up, so we've got the race results here for you. Obviously unofficial, potentially penalties to come through for some people. We may see some points adjusted, but this is how it ended up with your race, with 4 DNFs. That'll be Rob, Jake, Alex, and Curtis DNFing from the race. Don Satterfield did end up finishing 3 laps down, with Carlos Gatau and Alexander Carver-Robbins in 7th and 6th, Lewis Colon and Daniel Thomas in 5th and 4th, Chris Byram in 3rd, with Cesar Cabral in 2nd, and then Lewis Archer winning the race there from 1st, and leading for the majority of that race. So yeah, I'm sure we'll see Lewis going into some sort of cruise mode, I think, for the rest of the season, if pace continues like that. But let's see if we can get in a couple of interviews as well. We'll see if we can get in here Cesar Cabral for just to see how that race went for himself. Obviously finished in second place. So we'll see what he has to say about the race, see if there was any action at all that he can speak of. But it looked like it was a pretty easy race for himself. Hey, Caesar, obviously a second place for yourself, mate. 18 seconds behind Lewis Archer, and it looked as though Lewis's pace this race seemed just a little bit too hard to overcome. But again, you finished in second, so good result to yourself.
Yeah, I'm kind of disappointed with myself because 2 mistakes before my pit stop killed my strategy. I lost kind of, I don't know, 10 seconds in both, plus 5 seconds to repair the car, almost 6. So it means that, when I left the pits, I was just 70 seconds behind Archer. So I not say that I could win the race, but I could at least give him a little bit of a headache shake, like a little bit of trouble.
Yeah.
But yeah, so a lot disappointed with myself. Archer had definitely the pace today, but I think that was more the strategy. He did really well. Looks like that he was like with car really loose in the in the corners, but like incredible speed in the straights, and plus last few. So he did the good strategy. I'm happy for him, but of course I would like to finish this race in first. So I need to show myself again. I missed the first and the podium,
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, regardless, I think a second place is still nothing to grumble at, and you do extend the championship lead over Chris Byram, obviously, with finishing ahead of him, so that gap is extending slightly. I believe it would only be 5 points potentially, so still close between you two, but definitely extending it a little bit further. I'm not sure where Lewis will end up being, obviously picking up 25 points here for the win, but we'll have to wait and see where that looks like on the championship. And I think Lewis is starting to get pretty close here near the sort of halfway point of the season now as well. So 7 rounds in, we still have quite a few left. Next week will be Spa, and a circuit that I'm quite excited for, and hopefully it provides similar sort of action that Monza provides as well. Obviously a lot of high speed corners, a lot of long straights as well. So yeah, I mean, how are you excited for Spa?
Yeah, I'm kind of hard to say because Spa is one of the best tracks in the world. I know that it's a track where start position is not that important because you have many overtake points. It's not like here in Monza, because everyone thinks that Monza is just straight and just few corners. But if you're not close enough, it's not possible to overtake at all. So that's why at the beginning of the race I had to push and over Catal. Otherwise, I knew that I would not be able to fight with Archer and Chris. So that's why I was so aggressive at the beginning. And yeah, Spa will be interesting for everyone because Rouge will provide like who has the or like the strength and the focus to make this the Rouge side by side or really close from car in front flat. So this is what makes the difference. Who has the courage or has the confidence to do this? So
Yeah,
that's the
absolutely.
point.
It's
I just want to say,
yeah, cool.
I just want to say like the sponsors that give support to the team. So remember that Real Drive Tech simulators, Sensa VR simulators, Motorbull, Strike Brazil, Lindóia Autopeças, Comida do Dia, Elite Performance Industries, and yeah, so this is the main sponsors that we have in the team. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. And can't wait to see you again, hopefully next week as well. But maybe talking about potentially a win instead of second place. So yeah.
I hope one yellow flag maybe can help me.
Absolutely. Okay, it could have been all the difference this session. But
yeah.
Hey, even still, second place is still not bad. But yeah, could have been better. But hey, second place, you'll definitely take it. It's more points at least. So.
That's true. That's true.
But anyway, see you later, mate.
See ya, man.
And next up, we'll get Chris Byram in to talk about his race as well. Obviously finishing in third place. And then we'll see if we can get Lewis in here for a talk as well for first. But it doesn't look like Lewis is anywhere to be found just yet. Hey, Chris. Obviously a third place for yourself. Pretty good result, all things considered. Looked as though the pace this race was absolutely otherworldly for Lewis, and then just unfortunately it just seemed like you didn't have anyone to really work with to keep the pace up later on.
Yeah, a little bit disappointing, really. I mean, sort of going into it, I mean, there was a point back at last season where I obviously won the last season's race, and then a few rounds later we revisited Monza to try and recruit some people in just open sessions. And I remember Lewis and a driver called Lauren Tilsley. They had really, really good pace, better than what we had ran in the official race. So I knew coming into this, Lewis would be strong. And then when he banged in his qualifying laps, I just thought, yeah, he's got really, really good pace. If I can try and stick with him, that's what my plan is to do. And then if we're together at the end, then try and battle. But it was just damage limitation, really, going through. I think it's a Ascari, isn't it? I've been having issues in that in practice and then also in qualifying. It's just too much steering angle, too much throttle, and just spat me out with cold tyres. So I was just holding on my wheel, bracing to get hit by drivers coming past. But luckily, no incident points, no one collected me. So I was able to sort of regather my thoughts and just went down third place, really. I was hoping I would catch Cabral, but I was just making too many mistakes in braking and just on throttle. So, but yeah, damage limitation. Good third place. So happy with that.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, third place is still third place at the end of the day. You know, you're taking more points home. Obviously, more points for the CUDA team as well. But yeah, it's one of those things, as you say, on the, I believe it was the first lap on the exit of Ascari. I don't think we caught it on camera because we were looking a bit further down. There was a couple of battles that were looking like people were going to go 3 wide through Ascari at one point, which was bonkers. And then we sort of cut back to... we sort of hear a couple of tire screeches cut back, and there you are on the exit of Ascari, and I'm like, oh no. So I'm hoping that everyone else can avoid you, but yeah, everyone managed to get through pretty cleanly. So
yeah, there's just no point even looking at your relative when you're in a position like that. You've got to let everyone just go past and then go.
Yeah.
I think a few other people have got caught out because I ended up coming behind Alex Gutnecht as well. So obviously he'd been with obviously had an issue, I think. So
yeah, I think there was a couple of drivers having a few mistakes, especially through Ascari. Seemed to be catching quite a few drivers out, as well as the Lesmos as well, also proving difficult. Running a little bit too wide and just catching curbs, and it's just not great.
Yeah, it's really vicious. I mean, like going through Ascari, you can really push the front tyres and take the load off the rear. And obviously, if you get onto the curb or drop it over the curb, it can just spin you around. I wasn't even anywhere near the curb when I did it. It was just too much steering angle, too much throttle. Bit of a bummer. But yeah, I was hoping me and Lewis could just sort of pull away. He helped me in qualifying, so big thank you to him to drag me up into second place, even though it was still sort of 5/10 off of his pace. But yeah,
I did notice that. I was saying potentially whether or not there was anything to learn. You know, with you maybe just sitting behind him and seeing if you can follow his lines, but it looked as though just
he's quite a choppy, aggressive driver. When you do follow me, just like with his like wheel movements, it's mad to follow him. But I mean, even when I was following him, he was doing what 30.
I think it was low 36s.
36 flat, yeah. So obviously he's still got 4/10 in his pocket. So I didn't really learn anything too much from him, really, to be honest. So it was just more about trying to stick in his toe.
Yep, absolutely.
Get a couple of extra tenths.
But hey, I mean, it's again a third place result. Yes, you know, it's maybe not the result you were looking for, but Yeah, and Cesar Cabral obviously now extends that gap between you two a little bit, looking like it's going to be about 5 points, maybe a little bit more. Oh, sorry, a little bit less, because I believe you may be up for one of the safest drivers as well. I believe there wasn't very
Yeah,
many off tracks. So
I think I got 2. Lewis got 3, and Cabral got 7 or something. So yeah, I'll get the extra point with that. So it's again damage limitation. I knew I couldn't get fastest lap, so I was trying to use my DRS just to get good times to try and catch Cabral. At one point, it went down to about 5.3 seconds, but we were doing we were on a very similar pace. It was like a tenth or less between us, really. So it was whoever made the first mistake, and then that was me. So
yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I'll let you get on, mate, and hopefully we'll see you back here again for Spa. Obviously not next week, but the week after that. So hopefully we'll see you back on the podium again for Spa.
Fingers crossed. Lewis goes really, really well at Spa. So again, just trying to. I'm going to ask to borrow his setup from last year, and see if I can improve my times. But he'll be very, very quick. So again, if I can podium finish, if I can get a win, fantastic. If not, I'll finish behind and get a podium. Then it's all about damage limitation, and then still a long season to go. So
yeah, it is. But I'll let you go, mate. And
take care.
Yeah, see you later.
Ta-da.
So next up, we're going to hear from the man who won, Lewis Archer, and we'll just bring him in, see what he has to say about what could be considered quite an easy race from his point of view. Lewis, once again, mate, another win for yourself. 18.6 second gap to Cesar Cabral near there at the end, and that quali lap as well, another 5/10 on the rest of the field. I mean, when you said that you were trying to push and you were trying to make a point to prove, I don't think I was expecting it to be quite that much.
You might. Well, it's not a one-off. I mean, I put legwork into Hungary because, if I'm honest, I felt really vulnerable at Hungary. It's a weird track, I think, to get right setup-wise, and I genuinely felt like I'd be behind, so I put the extra work in. But Monza, I don't think. I mean, you can have a nice car setup, but it's just mostly about. I mean, you're a racer yourself. When there's not many points around the track to make a lap up, you got to make sure that you nail every single one of those 7 points every single time, because otherwise you lose so much time. Like,
yeah, absolutely. You know, it's not just about nailing the apexes on the chicanes. You got to make sure the entry to those chicanes is good and the exit of them is super clean as well. Because otherwise, you just lose, 3-4 tenths over someone who nails it. So, yeah, we've all been in that situation, I'm sure, where we've seen somebody who's just done a lap and you're just sitting there watching it over and over again, going, how? As I'm pretty sure most people were doing with you on that lap.
Yeah, that when it's only a 7 or 8 track corner, like that's it, exactly it. I remember being in that position when it's a big old lap. You can get your head stuck in. You can look at all these differences, but when it's only a few moments, you're just looking at it and thinking, "Is it in a straight line?"
Yeah.
But no, it's good to be this end of the field. I didn't actually expect that, because you again, even with an advantage like that, you got to have some advantage to get away at Monza, because they've got the draft. So I was panicked. I was so worried about that, and I thought I'll go light at the start. Now splash and dash 10 laps worth, just bugger off, cut that draft, like suck it late on in the race, and then I did have that stagnant point where me on a heavy car and Cabral on a light car, and then we came in the pits, and all around that middle part of the race, I noticed that me and Caesar were doing the same lap time, and I was like, yeah, as expected. This is all. I took my advantage early on, but I'm not sure if that's what really did it, but I felt like I cut away from the pack.
Yeah, so I was actually going to ask you whether or not you did actually underfuel the car a little bit, and that was your plan, was to underfuel, maybe try and get away from the field, and then, just deal with the heavier car later on in the race, and see if you can just find a pocket, and a nice little pocket to sit yourself in for the rest of the race, and just see what happens, and maybe doing it to avoid potential safety car issues as well. Obviously, as we know, Monza quite prone to them with lap 1, turn 1, but it seemed like it was a pretty clean race, actually, all things considered.
We know. I mean, well, to be fair, right before the race was about to start, somebody, I can't remember who it was, popped over the radio and said, just to let you guys know, there's going to be no race stream tonight. So there'll be no stewarding and there'll be no stream. And I was like, oh, well, okay. We'll smash it anyway. And, so the whole way through the race, I'm just like, no stream to go and watch after. It's always better when you got a stream to go and watch. So to see last minute that Chris was being interviewed, and I'm like, yeah,
Yes.
I love it.
Yeah, I'm here every week, mate. I'm not gonna miss it. There was no stewarding, but we did have the stream up. As I say, I'm always here every single week, gonna try and do the absolute best I can to put on a show for everyone else and show just what a great league this is as well, and how fast some of you guys are as well, and what great racing we have here, because it is absolutely insane. Like, some of the racing we've got in this league is absolutely incredible, especially in the F2.
Yeah. How many rounds to go now? What else
So we've got 14 rounds in total, so we have 7 left, with
Wow.
Spa being next. So
Tell you what, I got a bad memory from Spa. We'll talk about it more next week. But last season, Spa I did that thing again where I had like 1.2 seconds on everyone in the quali, and I was like, yeah, here we go. And I went down that hill into Eau Rouge, and I to be honest, I had issues with my wheel at the time as well. I couldn't quite feel the feedback and that, and it just spat me out the top of Radium. And so that was my race effectively over. So that was my that's my Spa experience.
I was gonna say, I was obviously speaking to Chris earlier on, as you heard, and he's been bigging you up quite a bit around Spa and saying how you've got really good pace around there. So I don't know. I think you've got something to live up to for next race and targets, definitely. And yeah, I mean, we'll take a look and see if I can actually get a updated standings as well before we finish out here. Just to see whether or not there's any sort of points, obviously, before any others get adjusted. And yeah, so we actually do have some updated points. So Cesar Cabral's still in the lead of the championship with 124 points, but you are now second with 121, so only 3 points behind. And then Chris Byram in third with 119, so very close for the top 3. And then Carlos Quitao in fourth with 84 points. So yeah, bit of a drop down to Carlos, and obviously Carlos didn't have a great result this race, so a little bit unfortunate for himself, but yeah, definitely looking close for the top 3 now.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about Carlos, Cesar, and Chris early on in the season about this potential championship.
Yeah,
it's a shame to see Carlos lose grasp of that top fight. I do feel like the majority of where that seems to happen seems to be at the beginning, 10% of the race. Like, he'll be looking back at Austin, he'll be looking back at Suzuka and things where he was right at the front. Arguably, I'm still amazed he hasn't won a race. I'm absolutely mind blown. We are on round 7 and he's not got a P1 yet. He's put it on pole like 4 times or something.
Yeah, it's absolutely incredible. He just doesn't seem to be able to find whatever it is he needs to find to win a race, and we're hoping he gets there. We are hoping he gets there.
When he gets there, it's going to be because he's blown past me a couple of times, which is crazy because I'm regularly winning, and he's had the pace to smash me a bunch of times, and I'm like, just got to get that hooked up over a whole weekend, and it'd be really mad to. So yeah, hopefully he can come on strong the next half of the season.
Hopefully, and hopefully we can get a 4-way fight for the championship at the end of this season, because that's going to be incredible. And I want to see it come down to the final race of the season for all of you in qualifying to be like separated by like maybe 2/10 and be absolutely battling it the entire race at Silverstone. That will be absolutely amazing.
That is what I mean. Even though you want to win, all of us, I'm sure that's what we all want. We're all here for the fight.
Yeah,
that is it. Oh,
yeah,
okay,
absolutely. But yeah,
I'm gonna go and watch the race.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, again, great result from yourself, P1. And yeah, hopefully we'll see you back again next week, as I say. Sorry, not next week, week after. We've got a bye week next week. So we've got an off week, and then we're back at it with Spa. It will be a double header week as well. Double header weekend, sorry. No, 2 weeks. Words. They're hard when you've been doing this for almost 2 hours now.
You do a good job, man.
But yes, either way, yeah, we've got Spa and I believe Watkins Glen afterwards, so that should be an interesting circuit to see these cars fly around. Watkins is a very interesting circuit. So
All the fast tracks, Monza on the back of Spa, on the back of
Yep.
Watkins. That's
it's
yeah,
gonna be
nice
fun.
one.
It's gonna be fun.
All right,
But
good,
yes.
nice one. Well, I'll catch you later, and thank you very much for the streams and the jobs that you do. I'm really looking forward to watching it.
Yeah, absolutely. And yep, that'll be it from us here in the IFL. Again, absolutely amazing job to everyone involved. And yeah, hopefully we look forward to seeing you all back again. Not next week, but the week after for Spa. And then we also have Watkins Glen the week after that. So we go back to our schedule of 2 on, 1 week off, 2 back on again. And as I say, absolutely amazing racing here from these F2 guys. And we will be here again tomorrow at 5 UK time for the F3. Obviously convert to whatever your local time zone is. But yeah, definitely excited for the qualifying for the F3. And yeah, that'll be it from us here. Again, massive thank you to all of our sponsors, TD Designs, Majors Garage, everyone else that follows along with the streams, all of the drivers, all of the admins do an absolutely amazing job. And we can't wait to see you all next week.